Good morning, Rhonda.
Good morning. How are you?
Fine. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Early for you.
Nah, it's 9.
I was laughing at myself. I'm like, oh, I'd like to do this at 9, and yeah, then I'd have the whole rest of the day. But I'm like, oh, California wouldn't like that.
Right. You got to kind of meet everybody in the middle and that stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
It is triple digits here. That is no fun.
Oh, geez. Yeah, we're like, occasionally we pop into the 90s. Mostly it's 80s. You know, I'm hanging out on the deck. Welcome
Yeah,
to my
that's
new
nice.
office, you know.
I can do that at night, believe it or not, even with triple digits, because that whole desert thing, you know, you get high mountain desert, you get the cooler temperatures at night. So that's
right. Like dramatically cooler.
yeah, I mean with triple digit, and then to see 70s even when it's triple digit isn't bad. And so yeah, and then when it's 90s and 80s, yeah, you might even want a little jacket, you know.
Right.
Yeah, it's nice.
Who else we got? Hi, Allison. When you get all the way to there you go.
Let me, yeah.
Clicking the buttons. Hi.
Exactly. Hi, how are you?
Good to see you. You are number 3. We got about 14
Nice.
people that signed up, so I'm just watching people kick in.
Oh, great. Good. Oh, sorry.
Well, hello, Catchment.
Sorry about that.
No problem at all. I got cats too. So where are you calling in from?
I am in the western suburbs of Chicago.
Chicago. And how are things in Chicago?
Good. Yeah, pretty good.
Is it miserable hot there?
It was, and now it's more like 70s.
Oh,
into the 80s.
Pretty
so
reasonable.
It's very nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
very tolerable now.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I think we all get so used to the fact that all of these get recorded that nobody shows up anymore.
Sure.
I know sometimes I do that myself, so I can totally understand it. Zoom has gone back to limiting the times now. For a while, it was like 40 minutes was the max, and I think there was a limit on the number of attendees as well. But now they took all that away while things were crazy and people were getting sort of connected to Zoom and figuring it out, and now they're back to 40 minutes. So we've got 40 minutes. We also have the opportunity to just sign right back on. So
yeah, I remember that from the class. That's good.
Yeah. Hello, Haley. Hit your mute button. There you go. Where are you signing in from?
Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
Nice. Over where New Society Publishers hangs out.
Yep, really close.
Nice. Yeah, I had a cousin who was busy building a home out there and then had a reoccurrence of her pancreatic cancer. So in our family, it was a big deal that they got the house finished and she got to be in it before she actually passed. Yeah, that was a bummer. Speaking of pancreatic cancer, anybody watch John Lewis's funeral this week? Yeah.
No.
Barack Obama and his eulogy was pretty impressive. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody get a standing ovation for a eulogy before.
Yeah.
It's kind of strange. No. Here comes Cynthia Speed. So are you guys all familiar with Zoom? The chat bar makes sense to you? How to get in and out of stuff?
Yeah, I think so.
It's funny because I can watch everybody appears and then I have to wait to see their video come on and then the audio come on. Come on, Cynthia. There she is. Cynthia, how's it going?
Good. Hey.
Yeah. North Carolina, right?
Yeah.
We got folks from Rhonda.
Salt Lake City.
Salt Lake
Utah.
City. There we go.
Wow.
Chime in, people. Where are you from again, Allison?
Chicago area.
Chicago. And Haley is, we are international. Thanks to Haley. In Vancouver.
Allison, who's Zooming with you?
Oh, it's my cat.
Okay, can't quite.
Yeah, he was a little bit more front and center, but
Oh,
now you get the unattractive end.
okay. Mine
And
might be making an entrance. It happens, doesn't it?
You look like you must be in your quilting room.
I am in my sewing room. Yeah.
It's a lovely display of colors on the back. All right. Well, I was just laughing because I had 14 people that signed up, but I think that we all get so used to them being recorded that you sign up, you get the recording whether you're there on real life or not.
Well, I'm so glad you didn't have it at 7. All of my beekeeper Zoomings at 7 o'clock at night.
Oh, yeah. Saturday morning seems like a good time. Then if you got a question, you can go out and get in your hives. Or if you've been in your hives and, whatever, it seems more connected to the day that, well, at least it used to be true that was the day I did most of my in-hive stuff. Now, can anybody remember what day it is? That's gotten harder and harder. I look back and go, holy mackerel, that was how long ago? And, it's sometimes the answer to that is 10 minutes. And sometimes the answer is, oh, that was 6 months. It's very elastic. But let's go ahead and start. Folks can jump in late if they arrive late, or they can get the recording later. And if we don't have any questions about how to make Zoom go, we'll skip the tech talk. And somebody tell me what's a current issue in their beehives. Got a problem? Got something you've never seen before? Wondering about progress? Okay, let's try this.
I'll kick it off.
Okay, go ahead.
I have made a whole list. When I saw the meeting for the first time last night at midnight, I was like, oh my gosh, I almost missed it. My latest, greatest, I mean, Christy, my hive swarmed. They reared a new queen, and I had a good brood pattern going on, and then it stopped. And I was like, what happened? What's going on? And I missed a supersedure cell. Either I harmed her, the new queen, or they didn't like her. But I went out last night kind of late. It was dusk. I had a flashlight. I've since Googled this and I realized all the various mistakes I've made. But anyway, the new queen doing quite well, great brood pattern. And I was going to dust. I do the sugar dusting every 10 to 14 days. And I've never had this happen. They were really angry with me, and I was attacked.
Last night?
Yeah. It was like, it stays lighter, it stays pretty light here. It was between 8:15 and 8:45. And now granted, I think maybe the white light of the flashlight, not good. I didn't need totally the flashlight. I just had it on both ends of the top bar as I looked at a frame, and I wasn't doing a super, invasive inspection because I really just wanted to see that there was brood, and I wanted to do my dusting because all the foragers are back. I thought I'd get better coverage. I thought that was a good thing,
Right.
I was just curious if that's just maybe too late to be doing an inspection, and the flashlight could have been aggravating, or do I perhaps have some bad genes in there with the latest greatest queen, and they're just gonna always be angry?
That's a valid concern, but I think probably it seems more likely to me that your hive has gotten to the point now where they have something to defend, and they are no longer a little package of 10,000 bees. They're, they're closer to 50,000 bees, and it's hot, and
it's very hot.
They typically get more defensive. How long have your bees been in the hive? Do you know that number off the top of your head?
Well, I'm a second-year beekeeper. So the reason my hive swarmed this spring is because they overwintered excellent, and I didn't get my second hive quite fast enough. to split them. I missed the moment. And they swarmed once, and then a supersedure, and then here we are. So I've had, I would have more bees if
Right.
all that hadn't happened, but they're looking pretty good,
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, how many
overwintering,
bars? How many bars is the Gold Star? 32, 30? 30.
29 or 30. Depends on what year you bought it.
just got it, right? So
Yeah. So you've got 30 bars, but you only got room for 29.
right. And this is my other hive anyway, but it has the same number of bars. So right. So they're populating 20 of those bars right now with something.
Yeah.
Lots of honey.
Well, there's your key right there, because babies and food are the reasons they will sting you. And then when you add into it, I mean, I have done some really silly things with bees in the dark. So I don't think that bees after dark is necessarily an automatic bad idea, but it can be pretty upsetting. And when they're already large and have stuff to defend, that makes sense to me. I mean, I've done crazy things with, I caught a swarm. I had a queenless hive. At 9:30 at night, I dumped that swarm in on top of that queenless hive. I mean, it's like silly stuff that you do, because what else are you going to do? My schedule was just demanding that it had to be done that night. So it can be weird with bees after dark, but I think you probably just have a thriving hive and a lot of bees, and it's hot and they've got honey. And
yeah, the temperature, that's a really good point. The temperature and just those factors, because that's true. I've peeked in there and opened up just to see what's going on. I've looked at them in the dark.
Yeah.
And I always thought they were actually more mellow. They looked like they were just slowly doing their thing, and they just seemed like they didn't care about me. So
Yeah.
I won't hold it against them. We'll start anew. I couldn't close the hive. I mean, I couldn't close the bars. I had to get out of there, because once they stung me, then they all could smell it. I didn't smoke. I'm trying not to smoke as often, but that was the one time I wish I had a smoker going.
Yeah, I hear you. It's always the time that you don't have it. You wish, right?
Rhonda, I'm amazed. What's the latest that you've been going into your hive and haven't met with resistance?
I typically don't do that. I mean, I've gone in at 7 p.m. and I'm finished in an hour. And at 8, the sun's still setting, it's not dark. But last night I went in at 8:15, and I didn't need the flashlight to see at all. It's just, so I don't know. So 7 p.m., 7 to 8 is usually the latest I would go in the summertime, with long days.
Well, I'm amazed, because my bees say 4 p.m., no more visitors.
Really?
Yes, 4 o'clock. I think they're done. They come back home. So I'm amazed. I got stung the last time I went in, and the time before that. I try to go about every 2 weeks, both times. First time all year. And I figured it's because of the dirt, and they're real irritable right now. And then secondly, one hive, the one that stung me, which wasn't a big deal, but was originally in parts shade, parts sun, and now it's in mostly shade, so it's getting moved. So those are the 2 reasons I think that I got nabbed. Just a couple of times. I just hurried up. I got out in time. And I get so fast, and I tend to spend too much time in there anyway. I figure out why I'm going in, and then I go in and go, oh, and I just stay.
Yeah.
You're looking at your bees, you're looking at your bees, you're looking at your bees.
And then I'm sugaring them, and usually that's kind of settles them. That's why I love to do that like every 2 weeks, because it's easier to close the hive. It's easier for me to close the bars without squishing a bee, because they're busy dealing with the sugar. And that definitely was not the case last night. I mean, it wasn't just about being stung. I could see them stinging my glove. I could hear them on my head. I was covered. I mean, they just really came after me. I was a big white bear coming in for the honey, for sure.
You should probably wash your bee jacket.
I did immediately. I did. I read that, and I washed my gloves. I washed everything, because I don't want them to remember me that way.
Just realized at first you said sugar. I thought you were talking about sugar shakes.
No.
For sampling, but you're talking about sugar to That's all?
Varroa.
Or,
Yeah.
Not solely. I don't rely solely on that, but it seemed it worked well for me last year when I had a brood break anyway. The brood break was helping me out anyway with Varroa, and so it helped me keep it down. I was only on a sugar shake. I was getting no mites. After a sugar dusting, I was seeing less than 10 on the screen bottom board, the oiled screen bottom board, and it got me to the brood break in when there was no brood in November, December, where I did an oxalic dribble to just knock it down for the winter. And I don't know, I'm new. That worked for me last year, so I'm playing with that again this year because it worked really well. I didn't have to over treat with chemical.
Nice. What else is on anybody else's brain? Go ahead, Haley, what's up?
Okay, I think I have a few issues actually. But most recently, I'm wondering about wasps. I've noticed the last few weeks, there's always seems to be a couple around, just kind of hanging out, like curious. Yesterday, there were a lot of wasps. I stayed out like about an hour just kind of watching, see what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And I killed about a dozen at least. I'm wondering if it was a bad idea to kill them because that would attract more. I also because my hives are homemade, so it's not airtight. So I was looking for little cracks and crevices, and I taped that all up so they couldn't get in anywhere else. And then I reduced the entrances so there's only one open. Plus I have wasp traps, but not near the hive.
Other side of the yard. Yeah, like
as far as I can.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's anything else I can do, or how many wasps is too many. Again, when I was out there for about an hour just watching yesterday around, the wasps weren't going in, they were just like buzzing around like little jerks. Just I don't know.
So
they were just
you're not seeing them actually like head to head with your bees, they're just around.
They're just around. I didn't see any wasp-bee interactions.
Can anybody else talk about wasps? Because the only thing I have ever seen has been the occasional kind of just around, like, hey, there's a wasp or a yellow jacket, but I have never seen them do anything that I thought was detrimental to the hive, unless, like I didn't want to interact with them, which is totally true because that's my least favorite bug. But I have never seen anything that was harmful to the hive. Has anybody else got experience in that? Because I've heard some horrifying stories where wasps and yellow jackets will just attack and decapitate bees. It's really ugly. But if they're just hanging around and you don't really see them, fighting, and they're not robbing because that's not their food source, they're just.
I see them foraging on the dead bees in front of the entrance a little bit, and so they're doing a little cleanup. Last year I had a problem with the yellow jackets. I had to learn the difference between paper wasps and the yellow jackets. The yellow jackets, smaller. I watched them go directly into the entrance like that wasn't their first time. They knew exactly what they were doing and feeding at the sugar, at my syrup. And other things going on with the bees, they seem to be ignoring them. They weren't fighting them, or they weren't fighting that one. They didn't wreak havoc, but that really concerned me. And I got out there, I was trying to kill them. I learned the hard way too, that just like a bee, boy, if you're trying to kill them, you better make sure you really did kill them, because a dying wasp puts out pheromone, and here come their friends. And they sting multiple times, and I was stung like 12 times on the shoulder by one. So I use my zapper now. The zappers, that battery operated zapper that you use for like houseflies or something.
Wait, I need to know more about that.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. I got out there and killed some, but that was last year. This year, all I see are I must have had a yellow jacket, because they have underground nests. I must have had a yellow jacket nest nearby, where I had more activity than usual, because this year I don't. And I have more like what you're describing, Haley, where it was there. I have lots of paper wasps around, and they're just around, and they don't seem to be causing any grief to the bees. So I've had two years, 2 different experiences with wasps.
Helpful?
So is it a bad idea to kill them? Does it just attract more?
I don't think it attracts more as in, you know, like more want to come and hang out in the area. You might find that it might exacerbate a sting situation because of the pheromone of them dying is going to be similar to a honeybee's alarm pheromone, I would think, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you've got the right idea though. Putting out a trap, something that attracts them, and put that attracting thing far from your hive, you know, so they go somewhere else for the thing that they're after. And you know, you can Google all day crazy ways of attracting them somewhere else and various things to put in traps, and you know, some of them are pretty gross based on what the insect eats, but attracting them away from the hive is probably your first line of defense, I think.
I thought it was weird that they were feeding at the syrup, because they're meat eaters, right? That's not typically what that was strange. Yeah, that was really strange to me, but whatever, that was weird.
Well, but think of the picnic stories you've heard too, of the person who picks up their can of soda and.
Well, that's true. That's sugar. Yeah, right. Exactly. They found a big can of soda in the hive.
Right, exactly. Which I'm sure that's what it looked like to them.
Yep.
All right, so if they're just kind of around, but they don't seem to be harassing the bees, then I'll just try to attract them elsewhere and just observe.
Yeah, I would do. Unless you really saw them make it a problem for your bees, I wouldn't be too worried about it. They simply are there. Along with other things that I see that people seem to go to phenomenal lengths to fight with ants.
Oh, I have that too.
For the life of me, I don't understand why that's a big deal, unless they are stinging ants. And in that case, the places I've always found them are usually between the glass observation window and its shutter, because they're looking for dark crevices to make baby ants. You know, that's what swarming for bees, ants between the glass. But if you open your shutter and you take a look, and then you brush all those stinging ants onto the ground right there behind your hive, think about it, because that's where you're going to stand to do your inspection. So you might wait to knock all those ants off the window, just for the sake of not doing the ants are stinging me dance before you even get stung by a bee. But you know, ants, I don't understand why everybody's that worried about it. They're not probably eating any honey even. They're not really.
We have sugar ants. It's those big sugar ants. So they're definitely attracted by the honey and the powdered sugar, you know. So I'm a little more careful with a paintbrush, you know, and I kind of brush off all the remnants of powdered sugar, and that seems to hold them down. But you're right. I had a lot coming up the legs of the top bar, and then you know, there's every time I would open up the hive, there they were. They're scattering, you know, all over the place on top of the bars. Yeah. But in terms of on the face of the comb and such, I didn't see them there.
Yeah.
So
what they're interested in. Yeah. The other thing I've seen a ton of, and maybe this is specific to the northeastern United States, but earwigs. Tons and tons of earwigs. Yeah,
I have those too.
Yeah. And they're just kind of a fact of life. You create a place where it's dark and it kind of is damp and it's attractive to them. And the thing I don't like about them is the little black frass that they live behind. But you know, they're not actually hurting anything that I've ever been able to identify.
I was going to ask you if you'd seen them, because the first couple of years, the ants, and all I did, I got a wide paintbrush, and I just want to discourage them. I just don't like them. They go somewhere else. Then was it last year and maybe the year before that? All of a sudden, earwigs. It's like they're replaced by something different every year. But they didn't do anything, and I never saw them inside. Yeah. And then this year, spiders. Although kind of. When I say spider, just one, and there'll be one dead bee caught up in it. She's got to go. Get rid of her.
That's what happened to me too. They built a web right in the corner, like in front of my entrance, and they had a bee, and yeah, that was gone. Yep.
No.
We're not having that. No. That's right.
Yes, and then I inspected all the crevices, inside my lid, and I found another web, and I just took them all
Oh, yeah.
out. I was like,
Oh, yeah.
nope.
You're their caretaker. They're depending on you.
I
I
know,
don't want to lose one bee.
Right.
I know. That's exactly how I am.
That's us. Oh. So Allison, what's going on for you?
Well, this is my first season with the top bar. And so far, first of all, I love it. I started last year with a couple Langs, and I love the top bar. It is so much easier to use, and it's just wonderful, I think.
I'm glad to hear
so
that.
So I'm not really having, knock on wood, any issues per se yet. It's pretty full. They're still building out some wax. Probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, I moved everybody back, took out the kitchen, moved everybody back, gave them the full length of the hive. And so far so good. They haven't completely built it all out yet. I'm still probably maybe 8 frames empty or so without wax, but they're getting there. And yeah, I mean, it seems busy. They seem happy. Awesome. So I'm just keeping my fingers crossed.
Does that mean 20 bars of comb or better? Are you talking a 30 bar hive?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty good progress.
Yeah.
Haley, how many bars do you have in your hive, and how many have got wax on them?
I have 20 bars with wax, 20 bars built out.
Nice.
Or maybe 21.
Gotcha. It's a good amount of progress for the time of year. It's people who are sitting on 6 or 8 bars and their bees have been in the hive since early May. That's kind of a failure to thrive. So good to hear 20. How about you, Cynthia?
About 20. I was just thinking.
It's perfect. Christy, how full is too full going into winter? Like, do people ever split in the fall because it's looking a little too robust going into winter?
If you split in the fall, where is your new queen gonna get mated?
That's my question. So no drones, no. Okay,
no drones,
you don't
no
split.
ability to, right. There's really no way to reproduce a queen, and that's why most of that activity.
Where's the cutoff? Like August? What if it's August? Kind of risky.
Risky, but mostly because of how are you going to get a good mated queen? If you can solve that problem, whether you do it artificially or whatever, or they're raising it, then that's probably a different story. But because you need them to have the season to get built up and get stores and another brood nest established and stuff, later in the season is more of a problem.
I just always hear about the fall nukes, but that must be something else they're doing where they're borrowing some broods. They got a lot of hives and maybe getting
and they're probably raising their own queens, I would think. They're raising queens, and so they're taking hives, turning them into nukes, with the idea, very popular in the New England with Mike Palmer and all, to overwinter everybody in 5-frame nukes.
Right.
A lot of reading out there on that subject, and seems to be really successful, but that's really not reproduction.
Gotcha. It's not the normal, natural way of them building up their nest. They're manipulating that. Okay. Exactly. That makes sense. I'll be patient until next spring, and then hopefully I'll be able to split into my gold star. So.
And then be ready, yes.
I will be ready this time. You bet I will be.
What else will we got?
Is swarming typical this time of year for them? I have a friend who runs top bars, and hers are they're swarming like crazy. And she started with new packages. Yeah. And she claims that they're building out, they're full up, and they're swarming. It just seems like I don't know if they maybe have more resources. They're located in more of a farming area.
That's what I was saying. Where are they?
Yeah.
Are they outside of Chicago?
Yeah, but farther, more, into the farming plains area, if you will, I guess, of Illinois. Yeah.
The typical time for swarming is when they have the best chance for that new colony, old queen, new colony, to really crank it out and create a whole hive out of thin air, essentially. That doesn't necessarily preclude them from doing it later, but July and August is pretty late. But think about where I started bees, because in Maine, you only get 100 days of summer. And so, you know, if you're swarming in August, you missed the boat. But in places where it's warmer later and there's forage more time or for more of the year, it's not as bad an idea on their part. It's just, you know, can they get a queen mated, and is there food for them to get stored and get themselves built up and make it through. But the other thing that's really confusing, especially as we come into August and September, people will say my bees swarmed, but what they really mean is they absconded. And we're talking, you know, like an early fall absconding, and it's usually Varroa pressure.
Oh.
So here's a quick, you know, I'll wave my hands in the air and show you what happens. Kind of like what you see behind my head. The bee population goes up, 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 and right behind it, the Varroa mite population. And then right when we all get to the peak and there's a ton of bees and there's a ton of mites, now it's fall. So the bees starts to fall off. Hold on. They took
that's
the
good.
40-minute limit away. Yay, okay.
We'll take it.
Yeah, exactly. So here you have all these Varroa mites that were able to reproduce really like crazy because there were so many bees, but now your bee numbers go down. So the number of mites per bee skyrockets. It just gets really intense, and that creates what they like to call Varroa pressure. And sometimes the bees just say, can't hang, we're just, no, we're gone, and they leave. Now that's really depressing, because you got them all the way through the summer, you think you got something and you're pretty excited about it all, and they take off because of the Varroa pressure. So it's really worth knowing, you know, monitoring starting in July, knowing what your numbers are, knowing whether you need to take some action. And if there's a lot of mites, do something, whether it's powdered sugar dusting or an oxalic dribble or something else that agrees with your particular mindset and belief system about how bees should be kept. So it's really, the thing that's really hard to handle is you try to do everything naturally and you try to just let them do it as they would be doing it if we weren't messing with them, and you find yourself losing them because the numbers just work that way. So it really is a matter of the population of the mites overrunning the population of the bees at that point, because the bees want to get smaller because they don't want to drag 50,000 bees through the winter trying to feed everybody. That's a lot of work and it takes a lot of honey, so they drop way back. But that means there's more mites per bee. So monitor, monitor, monitor. It's my little mantra. Know what your mite numbers are and do something if need be.
Do you, Christy, do you uncap drones? Like, I haven't had any drones since the spring, but this new batch of brood has a patch of drones. Do you play that game of?
I don't. I think that the bees need the drones, and I think that that's the reason there's any genetic diversity at all, is because they get away with making drones in some places. But the idea of killing all the drones in order to take the mites with them doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I understand the mechanism and that it would work for that, but I just don't think it makes sense to kill the male of the species. You know?
Yeah, I don't want to do that. So yeah, I was just curious.
I mean, I can see the mechanical bit being effective, but I think it just overlooks the fact that you need the diversity.
Yeah.
I've noticed a lot of drones hang out on the bottom of the hive, like on the outside of the bottom board.
Like underneath?
Underneath the hive on the outside.
Yeah?
Yeah, underneath. And I'm wondering, it's almost like the bees are kind of like pushing them out.
Yeah.
Like, is that a thing?
Well, the pushing out the drones is definitely a thing. I don't know whether you're at the right time of the year for that, or they may just decide there's too many of you, we can't feed you, out you go. So the idea of the drones getting kicked out in the fall is, gets a lot of airplay. One of the easiest ways to see that happen is if you have a hive that's on a surface where you can look and see the dead drone bodies. Very dramatic. I can remember going out to a hive when I lived in Bath. My hives were on my driveway, literally. So I had pavement underneath. It was really easy to see what was happening. And so one day I went out there and did an inspection. Everything was fine. The next day I went out and there were literally 92 dead drone carcasses one day later. So when they're ready to kick them out, they're boom, it's pretty fast and they're gone. if they're just not letting them in the hive, I would almost think that that's more likely to be temperature control.
I think that might be it. It's pretty hot, so.
Yeah, the fact that they're hanging out underneath, would you call that bearding? Probably, although sometimes bearding has them like on the entrance, kind of covering the entrance. So you see that too, but it's really a matter of, it's the HVAC system for a beehive. You know, you're looking at how many bees are in there, how well can they ventilate it, how humid is it, how hot is it, and all of those things combined, when their goal is to keep those baby bees at 93 degrees, I believe it is. That's the goal for, you know, as far as the viability of the brood goes. So something about the number of bees versus how they're ventilating and the humidity all combines to be a thing that they're working out by who gets in and who gets to stay outside overnight.
So that's pretty interesting that my new batch of brood has drones. And so these aren't going to hatch for a few weeks, which is going to put us practically into September. That
Which
these
is
drones
really
are going to be out. And I know they don't mate, you know, the queen wouldn't necessarily, you know, new queen wouldn't necessarily mate with the drones that are in my hive, but if maybe that's something to do with, you know, the location here in Salt Lake and the length of our summer.
When's your first frost? Do you get a first frost?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's not that, it isn't that late. It's like October, like Halloween, usually it can be snowy or it can be balmy. It can be either one, but you know, it's typical of, you know, it's just October is our first, it's some date late October. So that's kind of weird.
Yeah, it seems like that's pretty late in the season, but
not that late, you know, but maybe that's why, because I have heard that people will get some swarms in September, or like you said, it isn't really a swarm, they've just responded, but
yeah,
I don't know. That's just interesting that they're making drones now.
yeah. There's an interesting concept too that gets talked about a little bit, where they call it sort of altruistic, where a hive swarms and leaves behind all the resources that are there, and it's almost a way of like chopping the population in half and letting the hive that stays behind have the opportunity to survive at all. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm.
Because, you know, if you're a great big hive and you've got to do something about it, then, you know, they just fly off with maybe even no intention of trying to survive. And that would be one of the cases where I think it would be possible to see that it was not the mated queen that flew with the swarm. Could be that she stays behind, because that will save them a couple of weeks of catch-up time. If the virgin queen goes with the hive or with the swarm, then you end up with a hive that just keeps running and going. Of course, you don't get the brood break either.
Right.
Water.
Crazy.
Yeah, for real.
So many scenarios.
Right. What else is new?
So I have another question, if it's okay.
Yeah.
I had a very sad situation last week where a beautiful bar of honey and nectar, it just like broke in half, and the bottom half just like fell. It was like it like melted. It was a really hot day, and I only kind of actually saw that just on a fluke.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Anyways, my heart sunk.
I understand.
I'm just wondering, was it heat? What happened? It doesn't normally get so hot here, but it was a heat wave. Yeah. Getting up to 35 to 38 Celsius. I don't know what that is Fahrenheit. Sorry.
I would have to do the math, but it's probably pretty close to 90.
I think so. Like hot, like as hot as it gets. Or if there's anything I can do to prevent that from happening again, or what I do. How would I supposed to clean that up?
Well, I would go out with a bowl and a spatula perhaps, and I would scrape it up into a bowl, and then I would strain it, and then it would go in tea for me. That's what I call an accidental harvest.
That's what I did. I just didn't know if I should have left it and let the bees clean it out in the hive.
Well, they can pick up the honey. They could get, they could gather the honey, and they would end up putting it back in other cells. But at some point, some of that honey gets your name on it somewhere, right? At least a little. As far as preventing it goes, the only thing that you really have any control over that you can do with that is be sensitive to temperature when you do an inspection. And of course, don't ever flip your bars sideways. We all probably have had that experience, or at least heard that. And
or even just a little tip. I had it happen with just a little tip.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a lot of weight, and any kind of angle on it is a bad thing. But the other thing that I have seen is for no apparent reason, I've seen wax that just didn't hold. Wasn't even cold, wasn't even hot, and it just didn't hold together. So since the wax is affected by what the bees are bringing in to make the wax out of, I'm curious about that. I have never seen any data or research on, what qualities of the wax can we attribute directly to what the bees were foraging on. That's an area that would really interest me, because I've seen wax that for no apparent reason just seemed weak. And so you might be facing something like that. But I would suspect the first thing to worry about is heat. And so, earlier in the day, later in the day, anytime that's not in the middle of the heat, then you at least eliminate that variable, and then the rest of it is mechanical, and don't tip it. The other thing with honey too is if you can tell by looking down inside your hive that it's honey, there's no real reason to pick it up. You can just kind of move it over, get into the brood nest. That's my goal. I have always gone in through the honey end of the hive to do an inspection, just because they seem to take that better. If I dive right into the brood nest for the start of a top bar hive inspection, that doesn't go as nicely. But there's no real reason for me to pick up the honey unless, I'm looking for some problem with it. I just want it out of the way so I can get to the brood nest.
That's a really good tip. Thanks for that. I was picking it up to look at it. I didn't actually find this during an inspection. I was just filling the feeder, and I just happened to take a little peek behind the follower board, and it was the first bar.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was just kind of a fluke, but I had done an inspection that morning when it was cool out. But yeah, that's a good tip, that you don't actually have to pick up the honey bars. You can just move them.
Right, because they really do get heavy. Another thing that has been, it goes on the list of things. If I could pull one piece of information off the internet and make it so nobody had ever heard it before, this would probably be it. And that is, don't paint wax on your bars, because you can't attach that wax to the bar the way the bees can. And so if it's going to get hot and there's comb attached to beeswax artificially put on the bar, then having the whole bars just collapse right off of the actual wood. That can happen too. So I don't know whether that's was the case in your house, but I have had more reports of comb just spontaneously collapsing in situations where people tried to paint wax as if we were teaching the bees what to do about where to make comb, which was how I started out. I mean, I was making, when I was first building Gold Star hives, it was in my kitchen. And so I had control over what was going on with every little step of the process. But when I moved it up to a larger manufacturing facility, they were not so excited about the idea of melting beeswax and painting it on bars. And so we dropped it. We just let it go. And that really made me far more aware of my own thought process that was like, well, I think I got something to teach the bees, and here, build wax here, which is not as effective as we humans would probably like it to be. So yeah, they do a great job on just bare wood. If they had the chance, it would be on propolized wood.
On propolized wood? Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah, right.
It was coated.
Yeah, thank you, Christine.
Yeah. Christy, you brought up a point that's how I do my inspection too. I work from the non-waxed bar end, and then it hits the honey, working my way to see what's going on in the brood nest. I hear people talk about, well, what if you just want to check into the brood nest? You should be able just to dive right in. But I don't see how that would be possible, because you've got to create that space to move things, right? So
it depends on your configuration. I mean, there are people who will leave a couple of bars on the brood end, and then a follower board, and then the colony, and then the other follower board, and then the rest of your blank bars. But if you've got space on the brood side and you can get in there, now it might involve taking the follower board all the way out to get enough room to work, but it has just never gone well. They don't like it.
You mean a follower board and then the honey on the other side?
No,
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Let's see if I can keep in front of my camera. End of hive, top bar, follower board. And then here's the colony. Here's my last follower board, and then my blank bars.
Yeah, I'm entrance, couple bars of honey, brood nest, more honey, and then the empty bars. So I feel like I only have a choice of coming in from the empty bars, and then I hit honey, and then work my way to the brood
you have
nest.
to get the honey. You have to move.
Yeah.
Some way.
And I can't do it I guess I could pull out the closest honey, if I know where that is, to the brood nest and create space that way. Just trying to minimize all the sliding and the potential of squishing a bee, you know, but I haven't found a good way. They don't like it. I have to kind of work my way into the brood nest.
If your honey bars aren't stuck, like really super stuck, either tacked to the side or propolised in place, you can sometimes get away with picking up 3 or 4 of them and moving them together.
I have a lot of brace comb going on, and that's what called burr or brace or whatever on the sides, and it's sticky. Yeah, and it's sticky. So yeah, I can't do that. I can't just pluck one somewhere. It's not gonna go well. Yeah. Okay. Sounds like I'm doing the best I can with my conditions. So
they're bees. We're messing in their environment, and they want sticky stuff, and they put wax where they want it, and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, cutting an attachment on the on the sides would be probably the easiest thing to have to deal with, and the rest of it is just going to be the propolis being gooey, especially if it's hot. Just like propolis is like mozzarella cheese when it's hot. Stretchy, gooey, melty. You can squish it back together. It goes back together in a few months, and it goes all brittle and sharp and easy to break. It'll be a whole different story.
My current hive, until I'm able to split to the Gold Star hive, it has a hinged lid. So I can't even, adequately cut the far side of the brace comb. But I'm feeling like when you're doing an inspection every 2 weeks, I just kind of wiggle it, and it does, I'm tearing it off, but that doesn't seem to be causing any problems. Like the comb's not breaking. Once it's out of the way, then I'll take my hive tool and scrape it off the sides. But I hate putting that knife in there because I feel like I'm going to slice a bee, and I can only get one side anyway.
Yeah.
And sometimes they'll break the little bit of honey and exposes some dripping honey, but they clean it up really quickly. And I don't know. How does that sound? Does that sound?
It sounds like the biggest reason I think putting a hinged lid on a beehive is a silly idea.
So you walk around, because in the class, you're just on one side and you're going, just take your knife and go, do. It's not that easy. So
from here, on the side that's close to me, I can go straight down and I can see it. And then the others, I'm seeing the attachment from the comb side going towards the wall, but I just reverse the process. And the idea is just to keep the knife really flush to the wood. And sometimes even if you don't see an attachment, but you're a little worried about further in, you just do that, windshield wiper it up to be sure it's attached. But you do want to be sure that you can keep the angle from, because the other thing you might be cutting, never mind a bee, it might be a queen cell. I did that one summer. Every doggone inspection I got into during the month of June in this one hive, I whacked open a queen cell. They were trying so hard to swarm, and I messed it up time after time after time. So if you're careful, it's doable, but there are things to watch out for. And if you can safely pull and it comes loose, great, you're ahead of the game. But that's one of the reasons that you lose a comb sometimes too.
Right. I'm always scared when I do it, but it's so soft because it's hot here, it's soft, and it's worked so far. So I can't see the far attachment.
Really?
But maybe I need to make more space so I can stick my head in there. And I can't see the far attachment. I can only see the one I'm looking down on. So I don't know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Lisa sent me a picture.
I'm sorry, why can't you see the far one? A shadow? Because it's a shadow from the lid?
And you know what? I can't wait to get into my new hive when I get that set up, because I think I have a hinged lid, and it's not even hinged greater than 90 degree. You know what I mean? It's hinged, I think it's less than 90 degrees. So I think it is. It's just the nature of that. Yeah, I can't see that unless I stuck my head all the way in the hive and got enough and removed enough bars that I could stick my head in there. I can't see it. You know how the comb's wide sometimes, quite wide, that they're making, and the attachment could be, you know, not right on that working edge that you're looking at. It can be further in, and I can't always see it. And I don't have an observation window in that hive. I will in my new hive, and so I think the new hive will just be easier.
Is the lid held by a chain?
Yes. So I can I can change that wire and get a better tilt on it.
Right. I was going to say, if you let it go, the only worry I would have then is if it's that top heavy and the weight pulls the hive. That's another reason that I struggled and finally said no hinges for me.
Yeah. That's why I haven't done it either.
I had a competitor who thought he had it all figured out doing the hinged lid, but I'm like, okay, but I don't get that. And I don't want that. Have you ever seen one that was hinged on the short end so that the whole lid comes up long ways?
I think I've seen that on some crazy horizontal hives. Yeah.
Ooh, that really scares me.
That looks like a disaster waiting to happen.
Yeah. Is that a beekeeper in training you got there?
Yes, she's actually showed a lot of interest in the bees. It's amazing.
Really?
When we go on our walk, when she sees bees and flowers, she points and says, "Hi, bee," and then she blows a kiss.
That's adorable.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. She can watch me work the hive from inside the house through the window. And she really loves it. Actually, it's very sweet.
That's adorable. What else? Anybody else got? When's your next inspection?
Do you ever pull honeycomb out to save for them for the winter potentially? And if so, how do you do it? Where do you put it? And does it have to be completely capped?
Yes. Typically, in my case, because I have lots of extra top bars, because I make them, so like I have buckets of them. But I will often just sit it on its head and let it lives on the kitchen counter. I mean, people laugh because like, what's that? Bar honey. But because I'm waiting to see what's going on with the hive and they might need it and I'm not ready to harvest it yet, and because I have spare bars, which makes all the difference in the world, then I will just let it hang out until I decide. You could freeze it. People have done that. I don't find that, I mean, it gets so brittle when it's cold that I don't really see any big advantage to that. There's no real reason, but it sits on the countertop and takes up a little space until I decide.
Completely capped though, right? Like even though I have so much honey bars in there, there isn't one that's completely capped yet.
Really? No, that's interesting. Especially since you're in the desert.
I know. I don't know what's going on with that, but hopefully they'll turn the corner on that quickly with this new batch of bees being created. You know, maybe there's just not enough bees.
Plus this time of the year, I would think, hotter and drier. Do you guys get a dearth out there in Salt Lake?
Yes, I think we are entering that, and that could be why they were so angry as well.
Easy.
Yeah.
Plus that will help to dry it out, and then you'll probably see it more of it all the way capped. Yeah, but if it's got runny nectar in it and you turn it upside down, the obvious happens. So that's a thing to be aware of.
A lot of people in Salt Lake have been harvesting now, and they're doing great. And I have read that you can harvest non-capped honey if it's at a certain point and all that, but that's easier with Langstroth to do the tilt test and see how it runs. And obviously I'm not going to do that with
much easier
top bar, you know?
Right.
So I was just curious. I remember now you did say that you put it on your counter.
Yeah.
Just sitting out, you know, upside down. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way of keeping it vertical.
Right.
And as long as you don't need the counter space, then you're doing all right.
I didn't know if some people like put it in some sort of Rubbermaid tote, you know, if you had the right dimensions to just let it hang naturally and cover it. So I don't want any bugs to get in it or anything, you know.
Well, something that I have not had available until really recently, and the postal system is not exactly helping with the shipping back and forth between me and the guy in Maine that used to build my hive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I moved down here, I looked and looked, I ran through 2 or 3 scenarios, and you never guess who's back to making my hives but the guy in Maine. So that's weird, because I've never not been able to walk into the shop where my product is being made and see the process and, you know, perform some quality assurance on it. But when Chuck offered to go back in to do it, I was like, well, I don't have to worry about that now, because he knows exactly what it needs to look like. So one of the things that I'm trying to get back out on, available on the website, is a nuke box. And so you can easily, if you've got a nuke, it's got 8 bars in it, you pop a blank one out, put the honey in there, put the nuke box in the kitchen. It's a great way to move home, whether it's honey or brood or whatever you're moving. They're really useful for that.
I have a couple nukes, or, you know, some people marketed them as mini hives or swarm traps, you know, 10 bar. But my current hive, kind of a custom deal, it's such a deep hive body.
No.
My comb's too deep. Like, I thought I took a lot of care in checking out the dimensions of the Gold Star hive and everything, at least the length of the bars, so I could be compatible and move things around. But I learned the hard way, hive body comes into play, because you can't move. I mean, I'll be able to in early season, like in a split, if they haven't built out the comb totally deep yet, I think I'll be able to move it from one hive to another. But they're so deep that's kind of caused me some problems.
You'd have to trim it to get it to fit.
Yeah, and I guess you can do that, but if you're trimming honey, now you've got it leaking.
Right. Now you're harvesting honey.
Or at least some of it. I guess you could trim it carefully. That just sounds like I'm on a broken comb. I start messing around.
Trying to lay it down sideways to cut it. Yeah.
Can't. Yeah.
But it would still leave you able to move brood. You can trim brood. Mess with that.
I can trim that. Yeah. So that's what I'm kind of getting my head around for spring, how I can move the split into my new hive. So that seems possible. Trimming it. Yeah.
Another thing that you might think about doing, I don't know whether you would really care enough to take this effort, but you could build up from the bottom of the existing hive so that space matches the Gold Star hive.
Raise my floor. Yeah. And it's it's just, you know, it's a screened floor, so that should be, no, I do care enough to do stuff like that. I could see me maybe doing that if the trimming doesn't work out.
Sure, why not?
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, I've watched people take top bars and put them into Langstroth hives where they've built triangle spaces into the corners of the Lang box. So that now the only space they have to build comb in matches the top bar, and you don't have to do any hacking or slashing or trimming or anything like that.
Here's another one that happened accidentally, but with my current, you know, my current hive isn't your hive, but I bought your feeder frames. Because I bought your feeder frames for my non-Gold Star hive, and it worked beautifully last winter. But I guess I kept them in there too long because they built it out, you know, and it's one of the honeycombs. And it's awesome because, one, it has a higher floor just by the frame of the feeder frame, you know.
Right.
And there's no brace comb to have to deal with. And I'm just curious, like, why don't we do all of our bars like that, you know?
Do you know why?
I want to know why. I know you're going to have a really good reason.
This is the world according to Christy Hemingway. The Langstroth frame that does surround the comb supports it, and there's a lot to be said for that. As you know, if you've ever dropped a bar, then you know that having it supported is great. The biggest reason is the rectangular frame lends itself all too easily for people to put foundation in it. And if there's anything that I really dislike in the whole wide world, it's foundation. But the thing that the bees lose when their comb is surrounded by wood is the ability to put that swarm cell right on the edge. They
did it?
They have to out over the edge of it.
I have 3 of swarm cells on the sides.
Mm-hmm.
Not the outside of your feeder frame, but the inside. They made them, they never took them down. They're still there. And yes.
Was the comb attached all the way around to the frame? And where were the cells?
Yeah, well, it's dotted, so it's attached, and then it's a swarm cell, and then it's not attached, and then it is attached. You know what I mean? They figured it out.
I would love to see a photograph of that.
I will do that.
Yeah, that would be fun to see.
As soon as we're done today, I have to go fix my mess from last night and finish closing up my bars, and I'll take a photo of that for you. It's really cool.
All right. Well, we've hit the hour mark. I'm not ready to run. If you still got something, it's up to you guys. Questions, issues, concerns?
I have another question.
Okay.
Is it normal to have a bit of honey on both sides of the brood nest? Because I have like 2, I can't remember right now, but maybe 2 or 3 bars of honey, the front of the hive, and then the brood nest, and then the rest of the honeycomb in the empty bars.
What I would like to see if I had my way would be brood, honey, end of discussion. But, and Rhonda, you can probably speak to this too. Sometimes in the first year, you'll end up with honey on the, what would you call it? On the far side of like the initial bars where they started building their first combs. But that's a lot more typical in the second year because they have the chance during that early spring buildup when you're not able to get in there because it's too cold. And they will often pack some of that stuff full of honey. I had a conversation with Kim Floatham from Bee Culture about that, and his joke about it all was, wow, this is why bees don't rule the world. But if you have a unidirectional thing, then what happens is your brood nest starts in one place, they get to here, they start to store honey, and then when they start to shrink back for the winter, they can do that up against one honey supply, and there's no questions and no decisions to be made. If they get to the point where they're up against honey, but it's not enough that they get through the winter. So let's say, for instance, they end up clustering right next to where you've got 2 bars of honey on this side. And then there's 6, 8, 10, 12 bars of empty brood comb with no food in it. They can't move across that empty comb when it's cold enough that they have to stay in cluster. This is one of the biggest concepts that you kind of have to understand the difference between Lang hives and top bars, is because they can't come across that dry comb to get to other honey in the box. And you'll see a Langstroth hive die for the same reason. If there's honey in the 2 outer bars and the cluster is here, but there's 3 bars before they get to any honey on the other end, they can't do it. They cannot come away from food and they can't come out of cluster. So I'm torn every time I find myself looking at whether I want to do this, about whether I want to take those bars that are like 1 or 2 on what I would call the far side and put them down where the bees actually put the main honey stores, just to prevent them from ever getting caught in that situation. You know, it's just, they can't make the decision. That costs them time, according to Kim, and it means that they can't cross that comb in the wintertime. If they've got to be in cluster, they got to be up against the food.
My first year, they did it quite well. They skipped the first bar at end entrance. They skipped that first bar, and then they made their brood nest, and then they made their honey. But then in August, September, they actually went to that first skipped bar and made wax and brought in honey. and I moved it on the end, like you said, and they built it again in the fall. They were so hell-bent to put that
Interesting.
very strange, right? And so it was just one bar. So my second year, this year, I have Haley's experience now where my brood nest is in the middle and it's surrounded by honey. So yeah, I'm also, I have the same question. It's like, I think I should at some point move that all together. They're equally surrounded.
Maybe that's the part you should harvest.
And I'm kind of, you know, as a newbie, I'm kind of wondering how much can I'm still dealing with that too. How much can I harvest? How much should I leave for them? I was under the understanding that it's really best to harvest in the spring so you don't take too much. And
well, I've always likened that story to living in Maine. Most people have a tank full of oil, and that's how they're getting enough heat to get through the winter. So it's always been the analogy for me that if I come to your full tank of oil or a full, you know, pack of honey stores, and I take half of it and then say, good luck, see you in April, that doesn't make sense to me. You know, I mean, that's illogical. Somehow we got into this thing of, you know, you harvest honey in the fall because that's when it's ready, and that's when most things are harvested on a farm. But it doesn't necessarily preclude the idea that if you let them have it and you get through the winter, then harvesting in the spring, what's the difference other than, you know, you don't have it with apples in the fall. But I think that it, where was I going to go with this? Harvesting honey in the spring. Oh, it took me a really long time, like 6 years or so, before I was bold enough to say that we had any idea how much honey they really needed to get through the winter. And finally I said, all right, I'm going to put a number to it. And if they have got 6 bars of honey, if you're lucky, 8, and those are just honey bars, not brood comb that's been backfilled with honey, then you've also got some brood comb that's probably been backfilled with honey. So you might have 8 to 10 total. And that was enough to get through a Maine winter. So I decided I would make some comment as to how much honey they should have. But I will still say that it makes sense, at least in your first year, to let them have it all, because you don't know what you're coming into. And when they're established and they make it through the winter and they've still got food in the spring, A, you can have some, or B, they've got a better spring start. And at that point, you're not playing fast and loose with their survival by taking honey. It's I mean, what's the harm of waiting? But once you decide, okay, well, they're sitting on 8 bars of honey, the season's not even over, and they got this one where I don't want it, I would take that one.
But it's like 5 where I don't want it. And
well,
you know, so it's like, would you move that? I mean, take some too, maybe, but move that much. And then really, I think that's what we covered in the class. And then you said cinch it all back, like slide it all back.
They have 5 bars of honey and then your brood nest and then more honey.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you know, maybe I'm exaggerating. I think it's 4 bars.
Okay, well, that's still more than 2, I think, is where I start going, why are they?
Oh yeah, no, it's over 2. Okay, I can definitely, it's definitely like, it's 4. And each brood bar has honey at the top too.
Well, so that's normal.
That's good.
That's normal. Yeah.
But I mean, that's still more honey for them. But the other question that is related is I didn't understand what a dearth was, a summer dearth. And I thought I was being robbed by robbers, robber bees, and I wasn't. That was just the dearth. So do you feed syrup in the dearth?
If there's a lack of nectar flow, yes.
Absolutely. Okay, I didn't know that last year. That
you can lose them to starvation in July.
Yeah, no, they weren't going to starve, but they depleted themselves so much. I had to feed all winter long.
Yeah.
Well, to feel good about it anyway.
Yeah. Cynthia, what can you say about the dearth in North Carolina? Because it's kind of infamous.
It's here. It's here now, and. In my beekeeping club, we've got a listserv, a Google group, and people are talking about robbing.
Yeah.
What can I do about robbing and what, all the problems they're having. It's been real entertaining, interesting. Because we're not meeting now because of we're having Zoom meeting and we're not actually physically meeting. So there's really a lot of talk on our little listserv, and that's the popular thing right now because we are in a dearth.
Yeah.
And it appears that a lot of and I don't know why I didn't notice it before, but it appears that a lot of my associates with Langs take all of the honey, and now in the dearth, they're feeding them back syrup. I mean, they're taking all of the honey, and I never picked up on that before. And just by the things that they've been saying, I don't know if it's that common, because I just can't believe it. But forgetting what your question is, because that's just one of my pet peeves. It's just such a shock. I didn't realize that those that I had been friends with and respected, that they're doing that. And that was the cardinal rule when I was in bee school. So
to not do that, you mean?
Was to not, because honey is what's most nutritious for them, and giving them back syrup. So you always saved some. So a lot of times you don't take in the summer because they're going to need that for the dearth. Wait until the fall to make sure, and I like your 6, to make sure you've got enough to go through. You have more than that, then take it.
Right.
But a guy said the other day, he said, well, if I didn't feed my bees, they'd starve. And I thought, so why did you take all that?
Why did you take their honey? Yeah.
Why did you take all their honey? And then you're substituting something less nutritious. It's not good for them. And I forgot what your question was, because you touched on my pet peeve.
No, what could you say about the dearth? And I think that's really part of it is if the, well, first off, you can lose your bees to starvation in the summer, which just goes against most of what we think. This is the time of plenty. This is when they've got the most food. But certain temperatures, and I don't know where in North Carolina you are, but I don't imagine you're at 2,900 feet in elevation like I am. So we get a dearth up here, but it's nothing like happens down in the flatlands where it gets hot, and that tends to cut off the nectar flow. So there's flowers blooming everywhere, but there's nothing in them for the bees to gather.
Right. I'm in the central part of the state, and before you feed, you need to figure out why you're feeding. If you've got a small hive, a weak hive, you made a split, you've got a package or a nuke or whatever, if there's a reason, but your reason should not be because you took their honey.
Took all their honey.
So yeah, there are times when you that there are times when you have to feed.
Yeah. But yeah, if you're feeding them because you took all their real food, please rethink that. Just that's not logical at all.
Christy, on your 6 to 8 bar of honey rule, are you saying of your 29 bars, the rest all have wax on it? Like, what's the ratio?
Not necessarily. I can probably count on the fingers of one hand the number of hives I've seen completely fill a 30 bar hive. But what I would expect, and if I was like, okay, I'm doing an inspection, this hive looks good for beginning of August. Right now, I would want to see between 20 and 25 bars. How much of that is honey would probably have me thinking about how much sun, how much rain have we had, what have the temperatures been, that sort of thing. But by the end of the season, when I want to be basically closing down and not messing with them again until next year, whether that's North Carolina time or Maine time or whatever, about the time the temperatures get to where you can't do an inspection without hearing the propolis go crack, when it's brittle and you're in the fall and they can't rebuild that stuff, that's when I want to see that 6 to 8, if not before. But if it gets, if that happens very early before that, then you start thinking, well, maybe I can get away with that now. But you end up in a dearth, like Cynthia was talking about, and boom, they will go through that stuff so fast. You're like, well, wait, they had bars.
I know. Last July for me, it was like 3 bars of honey were gone. And I was like, okay, I've read they can sometimes move it. Did they move it and do something weird with it? And I thought, oh, I'm being robbed. And I put up a robber screen, but there were no cappings. There was no fighting. I wasn't being robbed. They were eating it.
They were eating it. Yeah. food.
And I learned a lot. But no, and they survived. They had, and I got them through the winter. But yeah, that was a new thing to learn.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Anything pressing before we go?
I have a general question, kind of. So where I have my hives is right next to a meadow in progress, if you will.
Okay.
It's a pretty big area that was grassy, and I'm in the process of converting it to flowers and wildflowers, native plants, that kind of thing. So the question has come up about burning that area.
Uh-huh.
So how concerned or what precautions should I take if we end up having to burn some of that area with my hives being right there? Like, should I close them up? Should I cover them? Should I not worry about it?
How much burning do you think that really means? Is it acres and acres? Is it 6 inches? Is it 3 foot?
No, it's probably maybe, let's say, quarter of an acre, maybe half an acre.
And how tall is the growth?
The section closest to the hive is very tall.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's probably like, 3-4 feet. Yeah, maybe 4 feet, 4 to 5. Yeah.
That's a good question. I would be leery of smoke close to the hive. Less so if it was, I'm looking off my deck and going like over there. How far is over there? If you've got a good 50 feet and you got a wind that's taking the smoke away from the hive, I'd be less concerned than if it was the other way around. I think I'd probably be out there with a machete first, though. I would be trying to not burn close to the hives, too close to the hives. Because everybody talks about they gorge on syrup because they think the forest is on fire, blah, 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 the whole idea behind smoking, which I subscribe to that being utter BS, but I'm not as diplomatic as some people. Just the amount of smoke is what you'd want to be concerned about. And the problem with it is you won't have any way to control it once it's already lit. So that my worry would be not being able to keep it reined in like I'd like. If you had a really good prevailing wind that was taking it elsewhere, it would, you could probably get away with that.
Okay. Any thoughts on covering like the hives? Like I know people do that when there's, pesticide spraying and things like that.
Yeah, you could do that. And robbing, often, the whole idea of covering your hive with a wet sheet. Have we all heard that one? I would think that would be a good method of protection. The problem is, what time of day is it? And where are your foragers? So if you were going to do the burning in the evening and you could see that most of your bees were home, and then you threw the wet sheet over it, again, that sounds like you could probably get away with that. I'd be worried about direction of the wind at that point and how much of it. Yeah, that's a good question. Because it'd probably be a lot easier to burn it off than to whack it, huh?
Yeah, well, we're kind of learning as we go and talking with people from the Conservation Foundation, and it's one of those things where I think everybody has an opinion, and we haven't quite figured out the best way to
guarantee everybody
go about it yet. And I'm very anti glyphosate and Roundup, and it's even surprising to me how many people from the Conservation Foundation that are okay with that, and I'm not. And so I'm kind of trying to find my way to figure out what's going to work.
Right.
So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I would be tempted to try it if I thought I could keep in control of the situation, but if you just want to eliminate all that question and doubt, I'd just go out there with something sharp and just whack it down.
Whack it down, yeah.
Of course, I'm married to a guy who's 6'6" and thinks that's just a ton of fun. So I personally would not have to do it.
Right. Exactly.
So, yeah, good question. All right, ladies. Anything else? Last call. Okay, we'll sign off. Thank you so much for coming. it's been great to see a whole bunch of girl beekeepers on a Saturday morning. And I appreciate it. So the recording will get posted. If you know anybody who was wishing they could be here and weren't, then feel free to pass it on. And we'll see if we can't manage this again in week 2, 3. On a private note, we think we're moving. Christy Hemingway having an address for the past 5 years has just been a challenge. But we're under contract on a house, but the refi market is flying, so we have not been able to get the daggone appraisal done, and we're 6 weeks in. We've been told it was going to be done this day and told that day, and we had an appointment to meet the guy on Thursday, and he simply no-showed. So we think we're moving, but we don't know when. So my schedule is erratic, and obviously you haven't seen an email out of me since way back in June, so I will try to stay in touch with things in between all of my personal machinations. And
are you staying in the state though?
Yeah, we bought a house just on the other side of Spruce Pine.
Oh.
At the same time that my husband got a job offer in Maine.
Oh no.
Well, it would be remote, so we would still need a place to live down here. So what do you do, right?
Yeah.
It's very weird. It's very weird. But yeah, it's a big place. I can start running muck mead there. There's room for Gold Star to have a retail place in the basement. We're pretty excited about it. We just can't seem to get an appraiser out there to look at it. So that's been the challenge. So, but more on that as it comes. And thanks again. Everybody have a super weekend.
Thank you so much for answering all my questions.
No problem.
Thank you.
Great to see you.
Nice meeting you, ladies. Girls rock.
Yes, definitely. Nice seeing you all.
All right, everybody. Be well.
Till next time.
Till
Thank
next
you.
time. Bye-bye.
Bye.